Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It's Monday, June 24th. This is episode 112. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe. Use a 5-star rating. That's Chuck Miketinac, Matt Roy. Chuck, you are back and better than ever after going to the College World Series. It's like you're Never Land.
That was really a lot of fun, and shame on me for taking 59 years of my life to finally get there, Matthew. It was fun not having to work and just enjoying baseball and watching my Aggie son get to watch his team do very well there to this point.
Hopefully get to see them do well again tonight.
That would be nice.
Which leads me into Charles Dickens once said, it's the best of times and the worst of times. Today is the best of times because you have a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals. You have the Game 3 of the College World Series. And then after that, it sucks. The whole sporting landscape sucks after this because there's no basketball, there's no hockey, there's no football. It's just baseball. And I love baseball. I don't want to talk crap on MLB baseball, but there's nothing else.
Well, we've got the All-Star game coming to Arlington, so that's pretty cool, the Major League Baseball All-Star game. So, I mean, that's right around the corner. Look, before you know it, football training camp will be here, but I realize in dog years, yes, it seems like it's an eternity away.
July is like the worst sporting month of the year. You have one weekend where it's the Open Championship, you have a little bit of baseball, and it's just like there's nothing else. It's the worst. October is the complete opposite. October, there's everything. So
I'm with you. That's a hard month to hate.
Yeah, October's great. July sucks, and that's just how it is. But anyway, we're going to make the most of it anyway. So we got a lot going on today, obviously, the best of times. We're going to talk a lot about the NBA draft. Don is not here, obviously. I think he's already landed in Brooklyn. He left at like 6:10 a.m. this morning.
Yes, they're there because Jack sent me a picture, our 100% greatest photographer ever. He's already at a pizza place with 2 slices of pepperoni pizza sitting in front of him. So
attaboy, Jack.
Just please, Jack, protect the roof of your mouth. Pizza in New York, if you're not careful, you'll come home with some scars.
No scalding here. So they're already there. He's not here, obviously. But last night, Don did get to sit down with a couple of guys from the Express News, Jeff McDonald and Mike Finger, who know pretty much all there is to know about what the Spurs may do and may not do coming up. So we'll get to hear a little bit of that. Also, there's already disruption in Big D, according to
love it.
According to
you say there's nothing to do during the summer.
A local reporter, Mike McCarthy, is already apparently sick and tired of Jerry Jones, and so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But first, as we usually do, we will discuss number 12. The number game comes up first. Number 12, to me, there's only one number 12. When you think of number 12, Tom Brady is number 12.
Okay.
He's always going to be number 12 from now and henceforth.
For me, growing up, it was Roger Staubach. So that was the number 12.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it doesn't matter. To me, it didn't matter. I was living in Virginia at the time, but still, my brother had like a Roger Staubach jersey living in, wonderful Washington country. So I'll go with him, and then, of course, I'm going to go right to 12 in Green Bay.
Yeah, but don't you think that, like, Tom Brady owns number 12 now? He has a brand, TB12. Like, he kind of has taken over the 12.
But when I think of Tom Brady, I just think of, the face and the hair and obviously everything that he did. But I don't necessarily think of the number associated with him, except for the number of Super Bowls that he won.
That's fair. I mean, 7 is
yes.
It's a pretty good number, too.
Yes.
What I didn't realize is how good the number 12 is when it comes to NFL quarterbacks. I was looking it up earlier, and I knew Staubach, obviously. I knew Aaron Rodgers. I knew Tom Brady. And then it just, like, looking through the list of Terry Bradshaw and Jim Kelly and Joe Namath and Andrew Luck and Randall Cunningham. And it's just
that's quite a list.
It keeps going on and on and on. It's just like, okay, apparently if you're a good quarterback, you are the number 12.
Roger that.
Also, 12s are John Stockton, good basketball number 12. Dwight Howard was 12 when he first came into the league. That was who he was, or what he was when he was with the Magic, when he was actually good. And then when he was at the Lakers the first time, he was number 12 as well. So a couple of other 12s, just in case anyone thinks of it.
Can you think of any 12s in baseball? I'm trying to think. I'm racking my brain right now.
Wade Boggs
was
12
okay.
with the Yankees.
Okay.
Not with the Red Sox. So I was going to put him on the list, but to me that didn't really count.
12.
Vlade Divac was number 12.
Vlade. Gotta love it.
Also happening in 2012, Giants beat the Patriots for the second time, 21-17. The Patriots were 2-point favorites in that Super Bowl, unlike the 2007 Super Bowl when they were like 7.5, 10-point favorites, something like that. Peyton Manning also signed with the Broncos that year, so thanks, Peyton. Appreciate you. Baseball, the Giants swept the Tigers. That was the second of their 3 World Series, right? They won 10, 12, 14. So that was the second of their World Series, 3 in 5 years.
I'll take your word for it. Yes.
Pablo Sandoval,
yes, that's true.
The Kung Fu Panda, was the MVP of that series. And then the Heat won 4-1 over the Thunder. LeBron James, the finals MVP. That was his first title with the Heat. They ended up winning the next year as well, but we'll get to that on
Pablo Sandoval, what a great ball player.
The Kung Fu Panda.
The Kung Fu Panda. I mean,
isn't that good?
I've never seen anybody with feet that could move like him at his size. And I saw him out one time at a restaurant with his family. He was making sure that he kept that weight on. But what a great guy, and what a great personality. How great that guy was for baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was fantastic. And he went to the Red Sox and then sucked, so it was good.
Big guy's hand. He got paid, though, too.
He did get paid.
Amen.
Let's get to also, by the way, since Game 7, the Kings beat the Devils that year in the Stanley Cup Finals. So I'll just get to that real quick. All right, Spurs draft rumors. So 2 days away now from the NBA draft. The latest rumors are everything under the sun. They're literally just throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. So Don had 2 Spurs insiders on Sports Sunday last night, Jeff McDonald and Mike Finger of the San Antonio Express News, 2 very reputable and knowledgeable Spurs reporters. Both guys have been covering them for a long time. So I wanted to play some of that here. This first part you're going to hear is about the false narrative surrounding Wemby possibly demanding that the Spurs win now.
Let me ask you guys this to start. There's this new narrative, I think mostly put out there by ESPN, that Victor Wembanyama or his people have somehow told the Spurs that they need to accelerate the timeline, that because he had such a great rookie year, the time is now, he wants to win now. Do you guys buy that, or do you think that Wemby's been on board with their plan and that they will continue to build this brick by brick?
I don't believe that narrative comes from anywhere within Wemby's camp or anywhere within the walls of the Spurs camp. I think Victor Wembanyama's probably been the most patient man in San Antonio when it comes to the rebuild that's in progress. Obviously, they have to make strides next season, but what does that look like? Does that look like a 50-win team? Probably not, and I think Wemby's on board with that. Like he said, the very last time we talked to him at the end of the season, he realizes this has got to be built brick by brick.
So you don't think they swing for the fences with a big-time free agent?
Well, when we're talking about these narratives, I think the frustrating part for the viewers out there, the readers, the listeners, is there's pieces of truth to all of it. I think that if you asked Victor Wembanyama, the people around Victor Wembanyama, would you like to win sooner or later, he'd say yes, of course. He's never lost like he did last year. I think that if the Spurs came to him and said, we're going to make an aggressive move this offseason, we're going to trade for a star, we're going to swing for the fences, whatever that may be, I think he'd be on board. But I don't think we're at a point yet where Victor and his people are going to the Spurs making demands yet. I think they might be encouraging aggression, but there are shades of gray to that.
But the Spurs would be foolish, right, if they didn't go to him and say, here's our plan.
Right.
We're going to draft number 4 and number 8, or we're going to maybe trade number 4 for a Tyus Jones, not the huge free agent. We're going to continue to build this brick by brick. Are you cool with that?
I've said this many times, but the moment that last lottery ball fell into place last year in Chicago, that second, the most important person in the Spurs organization became Victor Wembanyama. Like, he has to have veto power on everything. And again, there's shades of gray to this. He's not demanding that veto power. You'd just be crazy if you're Greg Popovich, if you're general manager Brian Wright, if you're CEO R.C. Buford. You'd be crazy to make a huge move and not tell the most important player in the franchise about it first.
Do you think that's accurate?
Fair.
Do you think that's true and fair? Like,
Yeah.
you would be. Do you think that? I don't know. I don't know if you're crazy if you don't ask Victor first, but you certainly want to make him happy and make sure that he is willing to go along with the moves that you're making, right?
Yeah, I mean, you said this aptly, I thought, which is, everybody's gamed this out 8 million ways to Sunday. And, we've been here long enough in the Popovich era to know that you probably don't know at the end of the day how this is going to shape out. If for no other reason, there are other teams involved, right? If this was just the Spurs living in this world. So, yeah, I mean, I think, if this is going to be a slow build, and if it was me, this is how I would do it, given this day and age of, how superstars move about the league and do all these other kinds of things in terms of, player mobility. I would just, if this was me, I would go take my 4, take my 8. I've said it before. The best part about rookies is rookie contracts, unless there's a way to move Keldon Johnson in all of this, because Keldon Johnson's making a lot of good money. I think Keldon Johnson's a great player, but the Spurs have essentially told Keldon Johnson that they like him better coming off the bench. Keldon probably views himself as a starter in the NBA. So given the fact that Keldon's making a lot of money, if they can move Keldon with one of these picks for maybe another player, that's the only way I see, maybe some trade stuff happening with the Spurs. I'm sure they could package up and, maybe package those 2 picks to do whatever. But, again, I think if there's got to be at least 8 good ball players in this draft, right? I mean, wouldn't you think?
100%.
So everybody,
we just don't know who the 8 are.
Right. Okay. So that's fair too. So be that as it may, I'm willing to concede that the Spurs probably know who 15 players are that would fit what they want to do. I would be very judicious with how they parcel this out. But, I'm just as curious as anybody. And I think that's the great thing about, we do this for every sport, right? Going into a draft is you can spitball and you can game plan and you can game out how some of these things are going to go. And at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But at least it gets everybody talking and everybody's interested.
Yeah. When it comes to Victor, I mean, nobody has been more invested into San Antonio than he has. The way that he's integrated himself into the culture, the way he's integrated himself and endeared himself to fans and to everybody who does support the Spurs has been something that I think you can write how-to books about. He's done it the right way. I think where the impetus for all of that, like the narrative of Victor wants to win now comes from, I think part of that has to do with Pop's age. Because you have this central figure in all of these moves and all of these and this whole dynasty in Greg Popovich. He's clearly not getting any younger. How much longer is he going to stick around? And is that going to affect Victor as well? So I think part of the accelerate the timeline narrative comes from, one, Victor is great, and he already is great. He's only going to get better. But two, Coach Pop is nearly 80 years old, and he's probably only got a couple years left. Are they going to accelerate it for him as well? I think that plays into it.
Sure. I'm sure there's a lot of varying factors, but I think Don said it best. I mean, ESPN is in the business for creating narratives, right? And what does this do? We're talking about a bunch of teams, especially at the bottom end, that there are probably a lot of people or there are a lot of fans in those fan bases that have lost interest. This creates interest for especially the lower level teams that you hope your squad's going to get, 1 or 2 players out of this that might end up making or being the difference to turn your team around. So, some of this is just to create stuff, create stories, to get people talking like we are. And, you can't blame them because, again, there are people that are interested in this kind of stuff. So if somebody throws out there that, of course, Victor wants to win now. Who doesn't? I'm sure he doesn't want to freaking lose, or win 20 ball games a year. Nobody does. So, it's probably fair that somebody said that. And at the end of the day, the Spurs probably have a long-term plan. I'm sure they do. I know they do.
Yeah,
how they're gonna parcel this out.
And just to put a pin in that conversation, it's like Victor wants to win. Of course he wants to win. Everyone wants to win. He's not going to demand a trade in the next 2 to 3 years if they're not winning the championship. If they win 40 games next year and then 50 games the year after that, that's good. That's a fine rebuild because you have Victor hopefully for the next 15 years. So the whole they need to win now thing, like, yes, I want to win now. I think all of them want to win now, but the whole thing is just so overblown with with Brian
Agreed.
Windhorst and all of
Sure.
the ESPN guys that are like, yeah, they want to win now, and he's going to demand that they win now. It's like, no, he's here. He's here for the long haul. They have him for at least 5 years, if not 8, because they're the only ones that can offer him that long-term extension on the rookie deal anyway. And it's not like he's Anthony Bennett of 2013, where he's already out of the league in 1 year. He's probably a top 15 player in the league already. So people go crazy on that sort of stuff. But let's get a little bit more in depth with Jeff and Mike. They were talking about what they think the Spurs will do with 4 and 8, which I found pretty interesting as well.
I'm going to sound like Brian Wright here, and it's frustrating. And I get frustrated talking to Spurs people all the time too. But it's true. I think that they are going to stay flexible, and I wouldn't be shocked if they traded up. I also wouldn't be shocked. In fact, I'm sort of warming up to the idea that they might trade down a couple times in this draft, where there's no clear consensus on who number 1 is, who the top 3 are, who the top 8 are. If they like a guy and think, hey, we can trade down 2 spots and still get him at 6 instead of 4 or at 10 instead of 8, I would not be shocked to see them do that either.
Let's say their 2 needs are shooting and a point guard. And I'm not sure it is a point guard the way that Victor and Devin handle basketball, but the narrative out there is they definitely need a point guard, a true point guard. If that's the case, we've got about a minute. Tell me who you guys like if they need shooting, if they need a point guard, or tell me who you think they're going to take at 4 and 8.
I'll go ahead and say I'm pro Stephon Castle at 4. I'm not saying they're taking him, but he's versatile, he can defend. He's coming off a national championship at UConn, play the 1 or the 2. The shooter could be Dalton Connect out of Tennessee at 8. Then there's also Jeff's a big Devin Carter fan. I'll let you take over there.
I like the idea of Devin Carter because I think you can probably get him at 8. I think Stephon Castle, you're going to have to make that move at 4 if he's even still on the board at 4. I think Devin Carter, you get a guy with a lot of was the star of the combine, had all the measurables, the vertical leap, the speed, and I think he's a guy you can get to fill that sort of point guard slot at 8, and that would free you up at 4 to take a guy that you really want, regardless of fit.
I think the fit. I like both of those scenarios.
Solid.
Stephon Castle, I really, really like. I don't know if he's going to be there at 4. Devin Carter, I'm not sold on. However, I think that what we're going to see the Spurs do is best player available. They don't. Yes, they have a lot of glaring needs. They need shooting. They need a point guard. I think that those are pretty set in stone. They could use, a big man as well. I think they're going to go best player available because the boards for this draft are completely different from when you ask the Spurs as if you ask the Hawks, if you ask the Wizards. They're going to have a completely different top 10 with maybe the same names but in completely different orders. So they could have very easily their number 1 player available to them at 4. They could very easily have their number 3 player available to them at 8. So why not choose those guys? Or if they're available at 6, you trade up. If they're available at 10, you trade back. Like, they have so many options here that it's going to be a best player available draft for them.
I'm with you. That should be the scenario always, especially in a league where positions and the traditional 1 through 5 on the floor has kind of been blurred over the last decade, or probably longer than that. Where guys, you just want guys that are big, athletic, and can shoot. And obviously, if your best asset is Victor Wembanyama with his size and length and his ability to, you could play everything through him. So, I know it's an inside-out league, but even more so, the Spurs have to be better at that next year. So who are the guys that best fit working around, having a traditional 5 in Victor, but yet somebody that, you can play kind of like the old triangle offense that the Bulls did. Run everything through him, and then, you vary everything around what's going on around Victor. So, yeah, you need some shooters, but I think best available, that's always the best way to go.
We haven't heard from our digital director, Bob Gambert, yet. Bob, what's going on?
Hey, so Robert Smith has got a lot of great comments in the chat right now with the live stream. But first of all, he reminded us number 12, Bruce Bowen.
Oh, well done.
See, that's
Yes.
good. Yeah. See, that's
another
my
good
bad.
one.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
Big shout out
Double
to Robert
B.
for
Yep.
remembering that.
Good.
And then he also says the Spurs can't screw up this draft. Stay with the 2 picks. That's his advice.
I don't think they can screw it up. Like, if you trade back and you get some, we won't know who these guys, how good these guys are, and for a couple of years
Right.
anyway. I don't think that they can really screw it up unless you pick an Anthony Bennett or something.
Interesting question from Lem the King. He wants to hear more about the workouts. Have you guys heard anything at all about the workouts?
Stephon Castle and Ricochet, I'm going to pronounce that wrong up until draft day. Ricochet both worked out last week for the Spurs. One of them got Saloon, who Don had been telling us was the Spurs were really high on. Tijane Saloon got hurt during his workout with the Spurs.
Whoa.
So that was a little. He ended up canceling out the rest of his workouts after that. But they're really high on Ricochet and Saloon, from what Don is saying. The workouts have all been going pretty well. Apparently, Alex Sarr is not working out very well for many teams. He's another guy. I think he's the Frenchman that's 7 foot and can play and do a lot of things. He's probably going to go 2 to the Wizards, but apparently his workouts are not going very well.
Hey, speaking of Frenchmen, Jonathan De La Rosa says, sign a Euro guard or a EuroLeague point guard that can give Wemby the ball. Alessandro Pejola? I don't know. Is 24 and can shoot 3.
Right, so that's the default around here all these years,
Just
right?
keep going
When in
French
doubt,
guards.
just find a European player that you know they're going to like, because they always have, and it's worked out pretty well for them over time in that regard. So, again, they're going to do things, and they're going to keep things well on the down low. We don't even know if some of these workouts are just there as smoke screens to try to throw people off the scent. In terms of workouts, I mean, it's famous now that Tony Parker blew his workout so badly that they had to talk Pop into drafting him anyway, and next thing you know, you have a Hall of Famer. So it's kind of hard. You never know if, guy's nervous because he's working out in front of all these people or, whatever the case may be.
Also, a lot of times when those workouts happen, a lot of the biggest takeaways from that are the private meetings, are like getting to actually know the kid and see how he eats, see how he interacts around the facility, getting to know them on a personal level and not really on the basketball court, because you can see the film, you know what they are on the basketball court. You don't really know how they are as a person and as a personality, how they're going to mesh with your organization. So that's a lot of stuff we don't hear, and that's a lot of the stuff that we don't particularly know about these players.
Another comment from Robert Smith. He says Kel L. Ware. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Dan.
Yeah.
He says he's really intriguing. Do you guys?
He's a solid player. I don't think he's going to go in the top 10 though. So I don't think he's going to be an option for the Spurs unless they trade out. So that'll be interesting. One of the things I'm really interested about this draft is I think there's a very real possibility that Donovan Clingan, the center for UConn, goes really high, and I think the Spurs might be intrigued by getting him at 4 and then drafting Devin Carter at 8, because putting Clingan, a hugely defensive guy who has the quickness and ability to get out to the 3, maybe become a stretch 5, has the lateral quickness to get out and maybe contest on a 3, but also get back to his post, has that recoverability. I think they'll be really intrigued by pairing him with Victor and having the best defensive front court that the NBA has ever seen. And then you still get Devin Carter or Rob Dillingham or Reed Shepard, whoever you want at number 8, whoever's available. I think that would be a really interesting.
Twin Towers Part 3.
Wouldn't that be awesome though?
I'd be okay with that.
It's like, why don't you just take Rudy Gobert with a decent mid-range and outside shot, put him on the Spurs and couple him up with Wemby? Like that's what you'd be doing. Rudy Gobert is the comp for Donovan Clingan. So
I just hope Kevin McCullough gets drafted real high too. The young man from Wagner. I mean, played at Kansas the last couple years. I mean, here's a guy that plays the game the right way. He's long. He's athletic. He's a defensive-minded guy first. I think, can be a good scorer in this league if, given maybe a little bit of time. I know, he wasn't able to participate in the tournament last year because of a bone bruise that also kept him out of the combine. But I think somebody's going to get a steal with Kevin McCullough Jr. too.
I'm going to be really interested to see where Zach Edey goes as well, but I don't know if they're going to go anywhere in the top 10. Anything else before we move on from the draft?
One last comment from Rapid Rick. He said he'd take Dillingham at 4.
Dillingham might fall out of the top 15. He might fall out of the lottery. He is not, according to ESPN and other CBS and all those guys, Rob Dillingham, the Kentucky guard, has not performed well in workouts, and they're not really convinced that he can develop an outside shot. He might be able to, because like we said, anything's possible in this draft.
Especially when you're talking about the youth of these players.
Yeah, anything's possible in this draft especially. You don't know where everyone has them ranked. Rob Dillingham could go in the top 3. He could go outside the top 20. Like, you really don't know. However, according to if the people who know are in the know what they're talking about, he's probably going to fall out of the top 5 at least, and maybe out of the top 10. Even though Jonathan Givony over at ESPN in their mock today have the Spurs taking him at 8, I am nowhere near convinced that they like him that much to take him at 8. Let's move on to some Cowboys stuff before we get out of here. So the Cowboys don't play a game for another 2.5 months, and already there's turmoil in Big D. Tyler Dunn of Go Long says that he spoke to Cowboys sources, and quietly, Mike McCarthy is seething. He says McCarthy believes that Jones has put him in a no-win situation, that Mac is fed up with Jerry and fed up with being undermined. What do you make of that situation?
I mean, I think it's certainly possible, and I don't want to, poo-poo anything that is being reported because I don't know, if that's true or not. This reporter is pretty much the Lone Ranger on this. But let's just say we have no reason to think that this isn't true or that he didn't get it from somebody that knows something that we don't. But I do know this. The way I understand it is Mike McCarthy does have an agent now, and he didn't have one. So start with that, and I think Mike McCarthy is definitely, and it would behoove him to be thinking long-term here, even if the Cowboys, based on McCarthy's current contract situation, maybe not be thinking more than 1 year. But there's a lot of guys that are in the same canoe this year with the Cowboys, right? The entire quarterback room, Mike McCarthy, and I've said this before too.
Mike Zimmer as well.
Yes. I mean, what's wrong with honoring your contract? Why is it a given that Mike McCarthy is supposed to get years tagged on to his contract when they have a hard time winning playoff games?
The only thing, when it comes to honoring your contract, there's a bunch of minutia there because it's only good to the owners to honor the contract when they want to honor the contract. If they don't want to honor it, they can fire you on the spot and they'll just pay you out, and that's fine.
Right.
But so that's why honoring the contract never sits well for me because players sign a 5-year deal and they're gone in 2 years and you never see it.
But at least they're getting, when they sign that contract, that's what they sign up for. So it's not like this is, that there's not language in there that they know what they're getting into when they sign that contract.
I think that's a good point, though, as far as McCarthy is kind of setting himself up for the future, because I think Mike McCarthy is very well set up, or has been set up, by Jerry and by the organization to be the fall guy if this all fails this year. If it fails because Dak doesn't have a good year, it comes back on McCarthy. If they succeed, it doesn't go to McCarthy. It goes to Dak. It goes to the front office. If these front office moves end up playing out. If the front office moves don't end up playing out, then it falls right on Mike. And so I think that what you said about him having an agent makes sense, because now you have people putting it out there like, oh, he didn't want this roster. Oh, he didn't approve of these moves. They didn't do enough to help him. And so next year, if he does end up getting fired, he can go to another job interview and be like, this is actually what I wanted to do.
This works, I think, for both guys, right? It's for all the criticism that the organization has taken for not giving Dak an extension beyond this year to this point. And then also the same thing with McCarthy. You've got, McCarthy has done very, very well coaching this football team, right? 13 wins every year for the last 3, right?
12.
Is that what it is? 12? Okay. So would you want him coaching your team? If I was Jacksonville or somebody else with one of these young, unproven coaches, he's proven organizationally that he knows how to run a ship. Now, it hasn't paid dividends yet in the postseason, but the story is not written. There's 1 more year left on this. And, I can understand why McCarthy's mad in a lot of ways in terms of, playing out his contract and feeling like he's probably done enough or has earned the right to work in Dallas beyond this season. The other side of it is when Jerry hired McCarthy, it was for one reason, to win a Super Bowl. And to this point, they haven't proven that they can get close.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this undermining, for lack of a better term, or having Jerry's hand in the cookie jar at all times, that's not going away, and it never has gone away. That's how it was with Jason Garrett. That's how it was with Wade Phillips. That's how it was with Bill Parcells. That's how it was with Jimmy Johnson. It's the reason he left. Jerry is going to have his hand on the pulse of the team, and if you can't accept that, you shouldn't have accepted the job.
Correct. and he was unemployed, and he was out of the league for a year, McCarthy was, before he got hired by the Cowboys. So, again, I see this from both sides. I don't blame Coach McCarthy for, if he is irritated, for, he probably has earned the right to work in Dallas beyond this year. But let's also not forget where we were in January when they were losing a playoff game where there was some question as to whether or not he was going to be able to work his final year of his contract.
Yeah, and I don't want to backtrack on something I said in January. I thought Mike McCarthy should have been fired. I thought they should have fired him after the game. Like, as soon as he got back in the locker room, like, see you later. That was a horrible performance, and he obviously did not do what it took to win that game. Neither did the players, but it's easier to fire a coach than it is to fire the players.
Yes, I mean, organizationally, nobody did their job on that day. That was across the board. I mean, you can't let the youngest team in the league, where even their fan base didn't think they were going to win, come into your house and then run you off your own field.
Speaking of which, and this is a complete digression, did you see the video? And I should have queued it up, and I am mad that I didn't. Did you see the video of Micah Parsons was at a kindergarten, or he was with some kids? He was with some kids, and one of the kids says to Micah Parsons, "I saw you play." And he's like, "Oh, which game?" He's like, "Against the Packers." And Micah Parsons is like, "I need you to delete that from your memory right now. Don't ever talk about that game again."
I like that tweet because it was such a pure response, right?
So
I mean,
funny.
it was nice, very well handled by Micah Parsons.
Oh, it was. He's like, "Yeah, just forget about that. Don't remember." But just thinking about that game, that's what I think of now. But as far as getting back to the question at hand, I think it would be hard for Mike McCarthy to not feel fed up, to not feel undermined, because that's just what Jerry does. Jerry is Jerry. He's always going to have a say. He's always going to have something to say. He's always going to make a headline. I think that he also has a point with this roster has not been improved the way that it should have been improved. If anything, you can make a very strong argument that this roster is worse than it was in last year. Is that the reasons for that are money, and of course, in that you can't pay everybody with the money that you have to pay for Dak, Micah, and CD, and I get that. But you can make a very strong argument that this roster is considerably worse, in that he has been set up to fail and might be the scapegoat if this season goes horribly.
Yes, I think your point is well taken. I mean, if you go into this season and you say, well, what has to happen for the Cowboys to win 12 ball games again, and then potentially make a deep playoff run, there's a lot of boxes that are empty right now, because you don't know if the new guys on the offensive line are going to gel, if the offensive line is going to mesh at all. Are the guys that they're turning over on the defensive line, some of the younger guys that they've had in the system, now they're turning over or giving them the keys to the car, are they going to work out? How's the DB room going to work together? You've brought in some new pieces at linebacker. You've got youth at that position. How's that all going to work? What's going to happen on 88's contract? I mean, you can go right down the list. All these things that you go into the season, it's like there weren't this many question marks last year. So to your point, I'm 100% with you. But what's wrong with McCarthy now being just a little more incentivized, because now he's playing for, or he's coaching for his next contract?
Nothing's wrong with it, but if let's say they go out there and they win the Super Bowl this year, why would Mike McCarthy ever want to re-sign a contract here? Why would he ever want to go through this again? It just doesn't make any sense. Even if they go through and they make it to the NFC Championship game for the first time in 28 years now, there was no reason there. You couldn't pay me enough money to coach that team with the way Jerry treats his head coach. But
I mean, I don't know.
you could probably pay me enough money.
There's a lot of people that have to deal with far worse, I'm sure, than Mike McCarthy is in their job.
Fair enough. I forgot to ask you at the beginning on the way out. So Rocco's obviously at the College World Series in Omaha does the Jello shots and whatnot. Is it as crazy? Like, are people just shooting Jello shots all over the place in that place? Like, is it as crazy as they make it seem on social?
It was really tame, although I have to, freely admit, for the first 3 days I was there, I couldn't get into the place. That's how many people were there. And then outside of it. But we went there after the Aggies' second ball game. And I think, like from a sociology standpoint, it's just kind of fun to sit back and observe. You have the youth in the club, and then you've got like the parents that were in there, and and older Aggies, and it was mostly Aggies in there after the Aggies won an epic ball game in Game 2. It was super late at night, but like there was a Tennessee fan passing him out and trying to get rid of his whole cachet of orange Jello shots, And so he gave me one, and I took a picture of it just because I thought it made a great hood ornament next to the Coca-Cola cup that I had with the College World Series logo on it. So I don't know. It's fascinating, and I just can't say enough about the environment. Every team's fan base was nice. The town was beautiful, clean, and it was just, if this is what heaven's supposed to look like, sign me up for Omaha this time of year every year.
I got to make it out there at some point. But
Yeah, it's fun.
that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Wait, hold on. Bob has something to say.
One last comment from Bobby Ryan.
Bobby Ryan.
As far as number 12 is concerned, Kenny the Snake Stabler, one of my favorite.
Okay, there's
that's a
another
good
good one. Yep.
See, like I said, the quarterbacks for number 12 are absolutely insane. Thank you to everyone who commented. We appreciate it. We will always read them on if you comment something that can contribute to the conversation, which everyone did, which is awesome. That's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will be back here on Thursday recapping the first round to see how exactly wrong all of us were with the Spurs and speculating on what they're going to do at 4 and 8, or maybe they trade up to 1. Who the hell knows? We'll be back here on Thursday to talk about it all. Until then, everyone have a good week.